fair, Bronco, to say that this guy was anti-war?
I mean, he's anti-war in the same way that Trump was anti-war or a sort of anti-imperialist president, as some people right now.
Well, yeah. Trump's stance was like Japan should pay for the bases that we have there.
Right. Or it was kind of doing everything to stoke war and then kind of shying away at the last moment. I mean, I'll give Carlson some credit. I mean, it doesn't require a lot of credit. He seemingly was one of the most, or maybe the most influential figure in telling Trump in 2019 to kind of not follow through and actually start a war with Iran. So that's good, but I mean, that's such a low bar. And that's the same thing with Trump. I mean, like, Trump didn't start any new wars, not totally without, for lack of trying. But I mean, is that really such a great thing? Does it mean he was a great president?
Yeah, I mean he also assassinated Soleimani and took us closer to the brink of war with Iran than we've been since the hostage crisis, even if you thought
increased drone strikes. Increased drone strikes rapidly, stoked tensions majorly with Russia. I mean, some of the most kind of the biggest accelerations in U.S.-Russia tensions that ultimately led to this horrific.
Yeah, I mean, nobody
watching every day came under Trump, and that's so. It's such a low bar. Yes.
In 2023, but in 2012, there was this moment in one of the Obama-Romney debates where the candidates were asked, what's the greatest geopolitical threat to the United States? Obama said climate change, and Romney said Russia, and liberal America roundly mocked him for saying Russia, that this guy's living in the past. This is some sort of weird Cold War throwback. He doesn't know what year he's in. So, the politics of that certainly changed dramatically, over the decades since then. But I believe, Jake, we have a clip of Tucker Carlson's answer to the same question. What's the biggest threat to the United States?
Russia is not America's main enemy, obviously. No sane person thinks it is. Our main enemy, of course, is China. And the United States ought to be in a relationship with Russia aligned against China to the extent that we can. China is the country that's currently, right now, murdering tens of thousands of Americans every year with fentanyl. It's depopulating parts of the country. It's pushing our life expectancy down. That's how profound a threat this is. It's coming from China, and our elites barely care. They won't even acknowledge it. In fact, many of our politicians run interference for the communist government of China instead.
Yeah, I mean, so it's an incredibly low bar, number one. Someone said, hey, maybe war with Iran is not a good idea. I don't think that means suddenly that they're like an incredibly courageous anti-war voice. Maybe they're just kind of commonsensical and don't want to, potentially die or, see catastrophe happen. But number two, I mean, as that clip shows, the way to understand Carlson's stance in Ukraine, which some of those broadcasts, there were things said that I agreed with. Some of them, where he would outright kind of say, I'm actually on Russia's side here. I absolutely don't agree with it all. And as a very different, kind of a very peculiar kind of anti-war stance to be supporting a country that's invading another.
It's a very subtle way of being anti-war to support the war.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that he was doing, and this is unless you think Richard Nixon was some sort of profound peacenik, he was basically just updating Richard Nixon's playbook, which was during the Cold War. Him and others who were Cold War hawks, they quite rationally looked at a possible alliance between communist China and the USSR, and they said, "Oh, that would be absolutely catastrophic. There's no way that we could take on such a force. With the combination of Russian industrial might and its resources combined with the massive population of China. So what we have to do is we have to try and kind of peel these two countries away, which they have tensions and difficulties. The relationship is not a good one. So if we can sort of exploit that and actually widen this gap, then we can, maybe peel off China. We can just deal with the Soviet Union and more easily win the Cold War. That was Nixon's thinking. That's where the one China policy came from. And that's basically Carlson's kind of thinking, I think, that drives a lot of this kind of anti-war content on Ukraine. Is it's a flipping of that, because now there's no more Soviet Union. China is the only whatever nominally communist power, a great power in the world. He wants China to be defeated by the United States. And so, it wasn't so much in that clip, but he has explicitly talked about the fact that right now this war is pushing China and Russia together, and that's a really threatening thing. We should be doing everything to kind of split them apart. That was his point. He wants the U.S., similar to other realists, similar to kind of maybe John Mearsheimer as well. I think they prefer that the U.S. aligns with Russia so that they can more easily defeat China. Now, a war with China, if you think a war with Russia is bad, and I think I do, and I think any rationally thinking person does, then get ready for what a war with China would look like. Because not only does that have the same exact nuclear risks, where we could all just end up, incinerated in a nuclear inferno, but also, Russia has immense resources that are vital to the world economy, but China is the largest, the world's largest trading partner. It's the largest trading partner of the majority of the world's countries, its trade with the United States is massive, whereas trade between the Soviet Union and the US was non-existent. So if there was a war between those two countries, that would be absolutely catastrophic. And this is what Tucker has spent not one or two segments, not the occasional segment where he's had Jimmy Dore on, not one or two lines here. He has spent years and segment after segment pushing this idea that China is a threat. It's responsible for everything bad in the United States. It's infiltrating everything that the people that run the country are beholden to it, so on and so forth. That the military and intelligence agencies have to get strengthened so we can take them on. It's not just a minor thing. You can't just say, I'll put that aside, but let's look at some of the other stuff he said. I mean, that's a major thing that he was pushing for the past 6 years, if not longer.
Yeah, it's kind of astonishing to see him be serious for 1 minute.
Yeah, the China scare stuff on his show is like almost cartoonish. Like, I don't know if you guys remember, he had that guy, I can't remember his name. He's some right-wing, social media guy who said the throne of Chinese skulls thing. I don't know if you guys remember that clip.
It was in the context of like saying that the military got too woke.
Yeah.
And the guy was like, oh, we don't need, these like feminized, blah, 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 guys in the military. We need the kind of men who dream of, I think it was drinking blood on a top of the road of Chinese skulls, as Tucker's like,
good
interesting point this guy's making. Yeah, very good.
Yeah, no, one, just in terms of Tucker's economic populism, it is amazing that his singular explanation of the fentanyl crisis is China.
Yeah.
Not like U.S. economics, causing like poverty and despair. It's all this foreign. The problem is just coming from outside. But then two, it really does put the Ukraine stuff in perspective. Because look, I'm with you, Bronco. I think that it's like a certain amount of stuff that he says about Ukraine, I don't think is wrong. I think that we should be more worried about escalated tensions with Russia and, the slim but terrifying possibility of World War III and all that stuff. And he did say some of that stuff on the show. And so I'm going to give him half a point for that. He would also say, look, I know this accusation is often made unfairly, but he actually was kind of a Putin apologist. A lot of people have been accused of that who are not.
Yeah, that's like the hack joke that's coming out right now. Like, Putin needs another spokesperson.
Yeah. And it's that feels so hacky or whatever. But then you go and look at some of these segments. I think he actually did one. I believe this is linked in Bronco's piece, where he was actually he actually starts with why have we been told to hate Vladimir Putin? What's so bad? What's so bad about this guy? And it's even if we're just looking at his Ukraine position in isolation, that's still like a pretty profound difference between the sort of way that from a left internationalist kind of perspective, you'd be anti-war and this sort of way of being anti-war. Like, you know, Eugene V. Debs, when he was being like arrested for speaking out against World War I, wasn't like, I don't think the Kaiser's a bad guy. Why is everybody talking about the Kaiser? You know, like, you know, take it for granted that, you know, that you should be in solidarity with the anti-war movement in Germany too, and, you know, all that. So it's like that's already a big difference, but it's like, all right, if you're just looking at Ukraine, I get how you could see it in a certain light, but he just could not be more explicit. It's like that clip that I just watched. It's like, yeah, his objection to heating up the conflict between the U.S. and Russia is that he thinks that the United States should be allied with Russia against China because, you know, that's really who you should, you know, stay up all night being terrified of. That's who you should want to, you know, like what we really need is conflict with China.
Yeah. And I think it's like, what's interesting about having this discussion about Tucker is like he's reflecting the discourse as it is, and it's like the Russiagate stuff went so far that Tucker's talking point is now, let's ally with Putin because the Democrats have made him such a bogeyman. So yeah, I think it's interesting that I think, I'm looking at the chat and some people are like, yeah, what's the point? Tucker like never made any serious points, but here he really was. And it's just showing like how bipolar this discussion has gotten, where it's like so removed from the actual circumstances.
And I think just to add one final thing to that, I mean, some people have I think they think of it as they're putting it out to me that oh, well, look, when Nancy Pelosi did her trip and, completely reckless and stupid, and it just simply endangered Taiwan by doing it, that Carlson had a segment basically saying, this is a stupid thing to do and she's provoking China. Yeah, that is true. And by the way, it's in the piece I wrote, so it's a completely pointless thing to put out to me. But if you actually look at what he said, he didn't say this is bad because it would lead to war with China and war with China is bad. His point was that the U.S. military is not in the position it needs to be able to fight a war with China. So fighting a war with Taiwan right now, and that's a direct quote from him, right now, is not in the U.S. interest. He's not saying that it's not in the U.S. interest, in the long term or later on when the U.S. military, when there's, tons more resources and money and waste has gone into the military industrial complex. He just means right now. And if you think that makes him a dove, then you must think that, Elbridge Colby, a frequent guest of his, one of the most extreme and I'd say influential China hawks out there, often Tucker Carlson. I mean, you must think he's a dove too, even though he is constantly talking about the need to fight China. And I mean, Colby went on Carlson's show and made that exact point on Pelosi's visit. He said, well, Pelosi doing this is incredibly stupid. She's poking the dragon. The U.S. is not where it needs to be right now to be able to actually properly have this fight. It's not anti-provocation. It's anti-provocation right now until the U.S. can, be in a position to wage this idiotic war. So I think just, people, and there are people out there who I think of themselves as left-wingers, but think Carlson had some good, anti-war points. I think people need to actually properly reckon with this.
Yeah, I mean, and in the segment, I mean, you quoted in your article, in the Pelosi segment, he explicitly says in so many words that the problem with poking the dragon is that the military is too weak. That we need to build up the military. He also says, by the way, maybe of particular interest to some of his left or left adjacent fans, that we need a stronger CIA to fight China.
Yeah, not so much. Not really against the deep state so much. Carlson's objection to the CIA was that they were having a young millennial employees.
Seminar.
Yeah, about having like generalized anxiety disorder. His whole thing was at the CIA, and that was this whole thing.
He didn't like that commercial with the cisgender millennial.
Yeah, the CIA was too woke. It was too woke. And I mean, it's the same thing. People pass around this story, this Politico story that the military or military officials celebrate Tucker Carlson's ouster, and I think that was also they're passing it around as being like, see. He was against the military-industrial complex. He was against the national security establishment. Look how happy they are he's gone. But you read the piece, and what they say, the people quoted are saying, is that they were annoyed because he was constantly insulting the military and saying it was weak and it couldn't fight very well, and that it had too many women.
Like, we're just trying to recruit more people. Like, shut up.
yeah, exactly.
Anybody.
Yeah, precisely. So it's not that they thought, oh wow, his the stuff he's saying is too dangerous because it exposes the decades of U.S. government malfeasance on the world stage.
You have been watching free public content from Give Them an Argument. To access every single episode of the show, the main show on Monday nights, all of the streams, all of the debate breakdowns, all of the patron-exclusive postgames on Monday nights, all of the patron-exclusive bonus episodes every week, and much, much more, go to patreon.com/Ben Burgis. I cannot resist ending this with, don't be foolish.